Well, thank you very much for having me come in this afternoon. Please forgive me for having worked at the bank for a few years, joking aside. When David Hill contacted me a couple months ago asking me what I would, if I was interested in presenting and what I'd like to do, I was going, wow, I'm not sure what I would present on, because I'm thinking this from an agriculture perspective. I was a commercial lender, but more so in other industries, not in ag. I had a couple of ag clients while I was with BMO, but that was it. So when I looked at it though and started thinking about it more, I said, well, maybe there's an opportunity here because of really agriculture is no different than any other industry that you would see in the marketplace. And so based on that, I started to think about developing my slides and what I would put together. And one thing I started thinking about, and I did put this at the bottom of my first slide where I said, yes, I've worn rubber boots. I wanted to elaborate on that just a little bit. Growing up in northwestern New Brunswick, there were a lot of farmers that were around where I was, potato farmers. So I've had opportunities to pick potatoes before harvesters are really the main thing to be using in the agriculture industry. Had a chance to hay. One of my cousins actually owned a dairy farm as well too. So I do have some appreciation for the work that you do, and after thinking about it, I thought there's some expertise perhaps that I could share or lend. What I wanted to do is to talk about marketing strategy. So when I was thinking about this, we're going to go right down to the bare bones and identify some considerations with what we call a marketing mix. So what I've done, or what I wanted to address first and look at, is the marketing mix variables. So when we look at developing a business and a strategy, from a marketing perspective, what we have to do is we have to analyze our marketing mix. Now, depending upon the type of business that you own, it could range into several categories, and that's what I'm going to speak to here first for a little bit. What we do in marketing, though, is that we identify the marketing mix through a P analysis. Now, for service-based businesses in agriculture, you would more so be defined through 7 Ps. If you're a product-based business, you would more so be identified through 4 Ps instead. So what I'm going to do is go back and forth through this to give some insight to both types of service offerings that we have. If looking at all the Ps, and you can see on the slides that we have in front of you, you would have place, price, promotion, people, process, physical facilities, and product. Now, when we're looking at doing this, not all of these mixed Ps will apply to one organization or one firm. So what I wanted to do is to provide us with some insight as to how this would maybe play into your business and what you could take from this to help maybe further the development of your business and strategy for your organization. When we look at organizations in general, from a marketing perspective, we can classify them through a range or scope. Now, what I've done in here as well too, through this range or scope, we can identify businesses as either being a pure tangible product offering. It could be what we also call a hybrid, or you may actually be what we call a pure service business. And what I've tried to do above each of that range or scope is provide some examples, simple examples of what you would see. So if we're looking at a pure tangible good, anyone who's in beef, dairy, in poultry and in crops, you're probably going to be more so, I would identify, as a tangible offering or industry that you're engaged in. Now, you could be on the other side of the scale, though, as well, too, where you'd be more so a pure service entity, where you'd be intangible, where at the end of the day, you're providing a service, but the person who's buying the service from you really doesn't have anything tangible to take from the arrangement. And when I was looking at that, I was thinking more of like an ag consultant who would come into a farmer's fields and then would provide advice or consulting services. And this is sort of where they would lie. In the middle, we have what's called a hybrid approach, where you would have actually a third-party, someone who's providing perhaps a third-party service where there is a tangible element to it. I thought maybe a harvest provider would be one that we could put in there, or someone who's spraying crops. So those are sort of just to lay the framework of how we would set up our identification of industries in the market. When we do this, if it's tangible, for a product-based business, you really have, where it's something that you can touch or pick up or carry, you more have 4 P's that you have to focus on. So we would look at product, place, promotion, and price. Now, I'm hoping that you will get copies of these slides as well too. I'm hoping that they will provide that. So you can take these back with you after and reflect on this further. What we tried to do, or I tried to do in the P's that are listed there, is give you some simple examples of what those P's would represent. For example, if we look at pricing, depending upon the structure that you're in, you may not have a whole lot of say or control in the pricing of your product, depending on what type of commodity it is. There are some other elements that you can. Product being one, sense that you may decide on changing your product offering that you sell. So you may add additional crops, you may bring in, different livestock than you currently have on hand. But that is something that you could consider, or you could add or take out depending. The other type of offering is a 7-base model, and this is based on more of a pure or hybrid approach, where you would have an intangible element that would be included in the offering that you're providing to your consumers. In that case, as we had with the ag consultant coming in, or even someone like myself coming to speak to something like this, we're really not providing something that you can touch, but we do hope that there's something that you will take away from the presentations or the knowledge that we pass to you. Those other P's that are included are process, people, and physical element. And again, we have listings of those as well too, of things that you would include or categorize that you would put in there for that. So these are the 2 models. So right now, probably, you could, if you took 10 seconds here, and you knew this before we even got started, but we could classify ourselves as either being a service or hybrid offering, or we'd also be a product offering. So those are the 2 types of entities that we have. Now, it's up to you. You can do anything, like I said, that you want to with these marketing mix Ps. And also the target market too, and we'll get to that in a minute. The problem is that though we would love to be able to change that stuff and do whatever we want to do, we can do that, but if we do that, we're probably going to run into problems in terms of what we call macro environmental forces in the marketplace. So, in taking a banker, for example, I would be one of them when I worked for BMO. There are entities that you have to work with ongoing to ensure the continuation of your operations. Some of those that I've listed here, we've identified as political, competitive, social, cultural, technology, and economic. The price of oil right now, of course, has an impact in the marketplace, so that's easily identifiable as an economic item. We can look at the improvements, enhancements in technologies in forms of ways to bring in crops or produce. When we look at social cultural, we have to look at consumers in the marketplace and how they look at how business is done. So I'm sure you've heard of CSR, or social responsibility. These are some impacts that that will have influence on the day-to-day operations of our business. You can also look at your competitors in the marketplace as well. All these factors in this macro environmental environment will have influence on what you say and what you do in the marketplace. If you try to avoid it and just go on and make your strategies and develop your business plans and go ahead and go forward, you will not be as successful if you did not take these markets into considerations, or these forces, I should say. At the end of the day, and part of the reason I'm here too, and what I'm hoping you'll get out of this is maybe something will come to mind in terms of how to continue to grow the business. Because regardless if it's ag, if you're selling hot dogs as a vendor in a grocery store, or if you're downtown selling beers at a pub, at the end of the day, what you want to try to do is try to figure out a way to grow your business. We want to continue to expand that business. If we're not doing that, we're basically, or unfortunately, the business is going to die. So what we end up having is a cycle for business. And we can have this for products as well too. But businesses also go through life cycles. Now, they can be long and enduring, and they can be very short, depending upon the type of business and the products and services that you offer. The pet rock didn't last very long, nor did Rubik's Cube, and other types of product offerings like that. Washer and dryers, dishwashers, fridge, they've been around forever, as has Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola. Those organizations have been around forever too. But the reason that they've been around as long as they have, and actually the example that we had earlier today with the 4-H club, where they were talking about, the young lady was speaking to the buyout of Tim Hortons, is really no different. Burger King purchased that in order to increase their arm's length of market share and to invest in another market that they really didn't have a competency in. One way to do that is to buy out your competition. And that's why they pursued that and wanted to do that. And that's what we're hoping to get to today here as well too, to give you that opportunity yourself to be able to figure out, well, how do I go about growing or continuing to grow my business as well too. So we want to extend the growth cycle. So if you can look right now and you see this, we have an introduction stage and then we have a growth stage that we go through as well too. And then we peak or we hit an apex called maturity. Once we hit that maturity stage, we have two options. We go into what we call a decline, our business model, or it continues to grow. Well, I'm assuming we're here today, and I was brought in today to provide some insight on this and how we would grow that business. Well, it really boils down to one thing. It's going right back to what I started with at the beginning of this mini presentation that I'm doing, looking at your marketing mixes. So what you have to do is you have to, and as an exercise, I would strongly suggest this after today's conference. When you're sitting down at home alone and you have a few minutes and you're thinking, I do want to continue to see growth. I want to go into other areas, and how can I do that? I would make a list of these. And this is actually what I suggest to my business students as well too, who are writing business plans or marketing plans at the university. Where are you in all these areas? And make a list of them. The different products that you offer, the different services that you offer, the employees that you have, the types of promotion that you're doing. All these things should be counted. It's almost what I call in marketing is doing an audit. So what you're doing is an audit or a snapshot of where you stand right now based on your marketing mix. Once you've done that, then you want to take a look at doing what we call a situational analysis or SWOT. Now, this should be done, again, yearly by businesses. It's strongly recommended to do this. And what we do is we look at strengths and weaknesses, which are internal to our business. So again, this would be something else. This is an assignment for home. This is some homework for you tonight. Is to sit down with a sheet of paper again and say, okay, what things do we do really well? And what things do we not do really well? And those are the internal elements that we would look at. But not only that, you have to look again at the external. And this gets back to sort of the macro environmental stuff that I was speaking to a few minutes ago. We also want to know what our threats are and what opportunities there are in the marketplace. And when we're referring to our threats, I mean an easy one would be what? Help me out. What would be a threat to your organizations? Your competitors, yeah, for sure. So that would be one that you would put in there, and then you'd start listing some of those main competitors that you have. Another thing that you would look at, though, too, are what opportunities do you see available in your market? Now, those opportunities that you identify actually should evolve or come back from your strengths. So the idea behind this to first identify your strengths. What things is my farm, my service-based ag business, whatever it is that you're offering, what are you good at? If you can match those up with your opportunities, that would give you a better chance to continue to grow that business. And that's the idea behind doing a situational analysis. So again, a little more homework for you tonight, if that's okay. I would sit down and make a checklist of this. And this is what I would do it on. We actually provide, and that's why I was hoping that you were going to get these PowerPoint slides so you can jot some of these down, these ideas, later this evening or within the coming weeks or months to develop your plan for your upcoming year. So when we look at this, we could see that, and what I'm doing, what I wanted to do here, I wanted to take a second and stop from a business perspective of a life cycle, but go to a product. So a product is really no different in the sense that it has a life cycle as well too. And what we want to try to do is try to figure out a way to extend that growth of your life cycle. So when it hits apex, it hits maturity, how can we continue to grow it? Well, it goes, if I had, I don't know, I'm not going to bother. Maybe I can, actually I'm going to go back. So, and what I would do is this. I have to go back to see what I'm good at. And based on those areas that I can identify, how can I leverage them against potential opportunities in the marketplace? Some strategists will tell you that you also need to focus on your weaknesses, and I do agree with that to some degree, that you do need to try to shore those out. But I should be more so interested in leveraging my strengths and my opportunities in the marketplace. That's my opinion anyway. So the hopes of doing that, or identifying completing a situational analysis, will identify those strengths and weaknesses. And then, again, going back, we look at our Ps, our marketing mix, to decide how we are going to fulfill or complete the new opportunities that we've identified by doing a situational analysis. As I say, remember your modification should be based on a review of your strengths, your SWOT. And in conclusion, and actually I got a little assignment here too. I want you to try to do this for me actually here while we do have a bit of time. And then I'll take some questions as well, so you have some. When we look at this, a stagnant business will inevitably perish, and it will. What you need to have to do, or instead of perishing, you're bought out by someone else in the marketplace who's identified opportunities and way to leverage them to continue to grow their organizations. Modification of a marketing mix may be considered to facilitate your growth, and you should be thinking about doing a SWOT to help identify those market opportunities. So, what I'd like you to do, and that's why I had a blank here, I'd like you to take a couple minutes while we have right now, because we have a few minutes together, and then I'll take questions in about 2 minutes if you have any. But I'd like you to take a second or two and list your strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats that you think you have within your organization. So if you wouldn't mind doing that for me for a minute or two, and then I'll take questions if you have some with the time we have left remaining today. So I'm going to time you. I'm going to give you 2 minutes here right now. Let's see where we can come up with some opportunities for the organization. So think about the things that you do well. What do you do well in your business right now? What are the areas that you have competencies that would be difficult for competitors to copy or you stand out in? That's your strength. Okay, maybe a couple of weaknesses now. Where are things you need to see improvement with your farms, your business strategy? What are some things that need to be improved? Okay, so what are some threats? We got about a minute left here. What are some threats for your organization right now? Competitors would be one. Well, what other things or entities are having an impact with your strategy to grow your farm right now? And then last but not least, opportunities. If you had to do a snapshot 5 years out, timer's up. Snapshot 5 years out, where would you like to be? What other markets would you like to be in? What other things would you like to be offering through your business? So now that we've done that, are there any questions at this point right now that you'd like to ask related to strategic development strategy for your businesses? One thing I guess to look at too is that depending upon the types of products that you're offering will have some influence as to how you would want to grow the business. Commodity type businesses may be looking at buying into other commodity types that they would be interested in. If you were a service-based business where you're a sprayer, that you're spraying crops, is there somewhere else that you can go or something else that you can do to expand that business? Dead silence in the crowd. Feel free to ask. You've still got me here for another 5 or 10 minutes. So if there's something that you'd like to know about, I'd love to be able to share. What makes a good marketing plan? That's a good question. So if I was going to be developing a marketing plan for my company, the first thing I would do is I would look at those P's. So is it a product-based business or is it service-based more that you have? Service-based? Okay. So one thing, due to the intangibility, that's an additional challenge that you have that a product-based company wouldn't have. So what you have to do, and it's no different for a doctor, lawyer, dentist, same thing. Maybe I can ask you this. How would you be able to prove yourself or your credentials that you are someone that another entity or business would want to work with? Especially because you're service-based. What would be a way maybe that you could provide some peace of mind to your people that you want to work with, that you actually can do the job that you say you're going to do? Yeah. Okay, so you know your product. So by knowing your product, if you go into a dentist's office or a lawyer's office or a doctor's office, how do they tell you that they are experts in those fields of what they do? Yeah, by doing it. But before you see them, if you're sitting in the waiting room waiting to go visit them, what will they have maybe on the walls? Yeah, they're going to have their credentials. So what you need to do, if depending on, what's the service that you have, if you don't mind me asking? You're selling different products to the consumer. So you'd have to provide evidence that those products are going to be better than someone else's products. So you're going to have documentation or proof, because the farmer's going to come to you and say, well, why should I be buying from you and I'm already buying from X, and the products that they're offering are fantastic. So why would I want to switch from him or her to buy your products instead? So one thing you would have to have is some way to communicate to them that your products are better, or maybe your service is better. You're going to provide better service to the customer as well too, more timely fashion. You're going to return emails, phone calls faster than X would, better guarantees, warranties on the products. Those are ways that you could go about providing that differentiation, because that really is what that would boil down to if you have competing products. Other questions? I don't want to shortchange you guys. I got a few more minutes here. I'd love to stick around for another 3 or 4 minutes and answer some questions.
Agriculture products, like in farming, in a lot of cases we are. Oh yeah, now it's working. In farming, in a lot of cases we are a price taker, and we are on the end of the chain. Everything that comes over you, you have to find a way to maybe in your cost of your efficiency to have a better way, a bottom line.
Yeah.
But the market is for us very hard to force. We cannot force it. You can do a little bit of marketing that there's more gambling than marketing sometimes to sell on the right time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you are lucky. I don't want to say it is all wisdom, that part. But how do you see it as a farm organization?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially if you're commodity based and if you're in what we call an economic system that's sort of like a pure monopoly where one player is not going to have a major impact on pricing. The challenge is then how would you go about making a difference or differentiating yourself in the market? What I would recommend, I guess, for me is that I would go back to my situational analysis. And if you're content in those are the products that you're selling, and it's going to pay your mortgage, it's going to pay your heat, your light bills, then unfortunately maybe that is the way that you have to pursue. But I would actually consider, are there other crops or other types of entities that you can provide in the marketplace based on your land and the type of equipment that you have on the land that would allow you to differentiate yourself from your people, from your competitors in your area. Another thing that I wanted to mention too, though, as you've mentioned, it is a little risky with the amount of money to spend on marketing. Normally in businesses, what we recommend is that you shouldn't be spending any more than about 7% on a marketing budget. And if you are in what we call a purely competitive industry or pure competition from an economic perspective, I don't know if I would even spend that much. I think if it was me and it was my industry, if I was trying to get out of the price wars or commodity structure or price fixing because of that, you may want to try to consider getting into other types of crops that would allow you more flexibility with pricing. That's easy for me to say standing up here because I'm not the one that has to put the product into the land and grow it. And it also depends upon the environment that you're working in too. I hope I've answered that a little bit at least. Anything else? Couple minutes left. I'd love to answer another question or two if you have something. If not, in conclusion, I would strongly recommend, again, first thing I would do is to see if there's opportunity to get into other markets, and this may be in North America, it may be outside as well too. There are, of course, additional challenges with that because then going into a political environment or those macro environmental forces actually having impact. So that is something that you would have to consider. If there is anything or you'd like to ask after, I'd be happy to answer questions. I appreciate you letting me come down and chat with you for a while. And if I can be of any further assistance, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email at any time. Thank you very much for your time.